Pay Your People Better, April 13th, 2026. I got some big balls. Some real big balls. Oh, hold on. Need to find my glove. There it is. Have that, and then that, and then we do that, and then a little bit down there. Okay, now. Ball. Big. And now I can start making my cold brew. Put this little bad boy in one of these. Oh, I forgot to open it. Oh, hell. Now I guess, let me see here. Alright, yeah. See? There we go. Fits all the way down to the bottom. $10 for the filter. And then for all 6 of these was like 30, I think maybe $40. So, about $7 a pop, roughly. Also, I haven't cleaned it yet because I've been just doing other stuff. Like this was $12. Like, it feels sturdy. Like by comparison, this thing feels like crap. Now, I probably bought it for about half price, but then again, it's also about half, a little bit more than half the total dimensions of this, capacity. And so I'm like, okay, this is a really good price for a 13 by 9 that just feels this solid. This will last me until I lose it or I die. That's the truth of this thing. I can just tell. There's no reason to ever get rid of this unless I either lose it or I die. Because while I don't have a ton of I hate that so much. I don't even know where it comes from. It sounds like it comes from the fire alarm. There's what looks like a little speaker there too, which it may become, but it doesn't sound like it's coming from there, which is really awkward. But yeah, that's annoying whenever it happens because I'm like, it's quiet enough that it don't recognize what it is, and then on top of it, I don't ever know. I can't really ever determine exactly where it's coming from. So whenever it does happen, I feel like I'm the one going crazy. Nevertheless, that's gonna last me for fucking ever. Now I've got this stuff, so let's go ahead and put some coffee in here. Because why the hell not? Sure Tight Technology. I don't know if I need. I think what I will do is I'll just hold off on one of these. Just hold off on this for the time being. Stick it like in my drawer here. And then when I decide, after like 24 hours or whatever, and I take out the beans, I take out the grounds, then I can go ahead and just put the cap on and it'll do its own thing. So that's going to hold a lot of coffee. Like most of this coffee is going to go in that tube. That's crazy. But that's fine though, because this is a 64-ounce container. It can hold a lot of liquid as well, in addition to the grounds, because the grounds are going to be mostly submerged. Yeah, this is like 3/4 of the grounds that I had in here. it's almost all gone now. But then again, after a day, it'll be fine. So could probably throw in one more scoop actually. So let's just go ahead and fucking do that. Fuck it. And then let's, maybe move it over to the sink so that there's no spillover. Yeah, that works. I want to get. That's good. That's real good. All right. In there. That is, look, I want to say that was about that much coffee. That's a lot of fucking coffee. This is almost that is so much fucking coffee. God, man. Cylinders and tubes and circular objects, and especially grated because, it's graduated cylinders and stuff. Like, they contain multitudes. So many different ways. It's so good. It's so awesome. Now comes the fun part. Unfortunately, I have this neck here I can do this with. Oops, it's already kind of leaking. Hold on. Okay, that's cool as shit looking. Let's show it to you if I can. Oh man, it got past the spot where it was having a hard time like soaking it all in, and so it kind of had that like weird sort of sheen, where like there was a dry patch and then. So this is definitely not the way to do this, which is fine. I'll just wait. So probably what I need to do is take it out and then fill it with water. There were no instructions, by the way. This was all there was when it came to that thing. So it's a learning process, and I'm okay with learning. Now, the one thing that's kind of surprising is that, so like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a video, maybe a GIF somewhere, of somebody showing the difference between like dry ground and wet ground. And I'm talking about like the actual ground on the earth, not ground coffee. And they took what looked like basically a mason jar and turned it upside down. And very interestingly, the wet ground sucked more water down faster than the dry ground did. Which is really fascinating to think about. Like, I can kind of pick up on why, because, there you have like capillary action through the sort of moist, and it wasn't wet as in like soaking wet, it was just moist. It was, a recently rained area, but not necessarily the day of or anything like that. And so, what happens if I just try to lift you up, and then, well, I don't have 3 hands, and that's unfortunate right about now, so Punk's whole brother. Check it out now. Yeah, like even the filter is not even fully soaked. I guess one thing I could have done was, let's just see what happens when it's mostly filled. Alright, losing a little bit of coffee already, but now, because like even the filter is only semi-wet. But it was really interesting seeing the water get kind of like almost sucked out of the bottle from the wet, more, recently moistened ground versus the dry ground. And like I was saying, the capillary action, a capillary action, depending on which side of the pond you're on. It makes sense because of adhesion. Water will stick to itself and it'll start to pull. Whereas you don't have as much water because there's no real capillary action or capillary action, and there isn't really any water to pull on itself, and so you would think, oh well, a dry ground would be more likely to pull water, but that's not necessarily the case. It could have, especially if the surface area of the dry surface is, oops, I forgot to put that back up after it fell, is very fine. So like if you have a very fine surface area, water can beat up on it. That's why like certain animals, like water striders for instance, can literally run on water because like they have tiny little hairs that increase the surface area significantly enough on their feet that they prevent water from getting in between the tiny hairs. And you might think that wouldn't likely happen when it comes to just the earth, but you'd be wrong. The earth is fascinating in that regard. So now that this is like essentially soaked, let's see what I can accomplish, if anything. Oops, a little too much there. Got a little bit of premature. So it seems like it's So it's definitely one of those situations where fill them both up first, and then insert slowly. But it seems to be draining relatively quickly too, so. This is fascinating. I'm just, like, so I was talking to this one guy when I was still living in the shelter, and he was there for probably about 6 months before he ended up leaving, maybe a little longer than that. He left like December of 24, maybe January. I can't remember exactly when he left. But they had to move him around a bit because of the rains that we had, which was really fascinating too, because if you think about it, he left right before all the fires happened. I think we had the rains after the fact. Shit, I don't even remember anymore. Because when I first got to the shelter, it was June 2024, right? The fires happened around the time that I was working and then was soon laid off from my rehab job. But we also had like a series of fucking wet ass periods around that same time too. It was weird. I think it must have been after the fact, which I'm sure didn't help because, when you have a dry spell like that and then you just have just constant fucking rain, it's not going to do you any good, and it's going to wash away a lot of the soil and stuff. So, and it's the main problem with this. Oof, a little too much there. But I guess what I could do instead of this is, maybe use a measuring cup to like pour the remainder in. But again, it's a fun little learning experience. But anyway, what I was talking about was when I was talking to him specifically, he was going to go into HVAC, which is a really good industry to go in anyway for most people, because I might even have to try it at some point. It's not an industry that, as far as I'm aware, it's not necessarily an industry that you have to be fully like labor intensive in. Obviously, you know, if you're a tech and you're the one, you know, putting shit up and all that kind of stuff, that's going to help. But there are other aspects of the world of HVAC that you can exist in. And I even took some courses in HVAC and plumbing when I was working for the AI company that I'll call it the AI company. Because basically all I was doing was writing articles using AI, and then, you know, fact and or, you know, I was checking the hallucinations, fact checking, spelling. It always wanted to use unparalleled. The word unparalleled was used so many fucking times. It was ridiculous. And I was like, we can't use this word 5 times in a single blog post. It was a terrible job, by the way. Like, I thought when going into it, it sounded like it was an okay job, but like the amount of numbers, like some of these people were working 8 hours a day and they were cranking out like 20, 30, 50 articles a day. And I'm like, I was lucky to get out 6 in a 4-hour period. That shit was soul crushing. It's one of the worst jobs I've ever had. And so, you know, like when they terminated me, I was like, all right, whatever, I don't care. Actually, they didn't even terminate me. The position, they were getting rid of the position. Now, how many people got moved over to a different position, I don't fucking know, but yeah, it was it was a nightmare, to say the very least. So, despite that, you know, being the reason why I ended up homeless, I was still more or less okay with it. It's like I'm watering a plant right now. But I'm going to make coffee the other way. And the cool thing is like, I will be saving on using these filters too. For the most part, like I said, there will most likely be times in the future where I'm very likely to be making my own coffee again. Like the next time I go to the store, I am going to buy another one of these because, you know, all that. Oh wow, nice big hole just opened up. That's cool. That's at least enough for another one. Lid there. But yeah, I mean, it didn't help that I lost that job and then, you know, became homeless because I couldn't find any other work. But, you know, being homeless, I am apparently prepared for being homeless. I don't know how to take that information and really properly process it. And that's, in a way, kind of problematic. I will say that, you know, being homeless is not a fun experience. It's not something I would recommend for anybody. It is one of the most expensive times of my life. There are moments of my homelessness, mostly in my previous experiences with homelessness, that are some of the darkest. Although admittedly the last one was pretty dark because I almost fucking killed myself because oh yeah, let's just use this water. Wait, is there any water in the other one? Nope, no water in there. Oh, it's fine. You know, because this time around, you know, I actually attempted to try to kill myself, almost anyway. I got real close after the whole first aid shenanigans and shit. But I was still prepared this time around, especially. But even in the first stage of homelessness, there's something about it that I can handle. Which is weird I mean, now, not so much, especially because now I have the injuries and stuff and, being, the constant need to walk around and shit. But, um, I don't like the idea of being capable, if you will, of overcoming my struggles. One of the things that my therapist had said in the last, I want to say, year and a half, is like, you're very resilient and or strong. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's resilient. And he was saying it in a way that was intended to be like complimentary, and it was a nice thing that he said. And it even had like an emotional impact on me at the time. But the thing is I don't want to be fucking resilient anymore. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I sleep 10 plus hours a day, every day. Because living on the streets is literally exhausting. You do not get enough sleep when you live on the streets. You're basically fighting for all your basic needs. You're fighting to find a toilet. You're fighting to find a place to just relax. It's a constant fight. And maybe the reason that I'm capable of doing that is because that's kind of the environment I grew up in as a kid. It's like there was a fight every day. It may not have been a physical fight, but oftentimes it was. But it was like fighting against oppressive parents who, sure, there are times where they did their parenting stuff. Like I got a bike when I was like 14, or maybe actually I think it was younger. It was like 10 or 11. Like I still remember to this day, and I've seen the home footage too of me like closing my eyes so much that when I take my hands off, I can't see because I've pressed them into my skull so much. And then I have like all that weird staticky shit that takes a while. And then like, there's the genuine surprise of seeing the mountain bike. And like, yeah, my parents, did certain things for me that you would think a good parent would do. But there's also a lot of things that my parents did to me that you would think bad people do. And those things don't necessarily erase the good, but they don't make up for it. The good doesn't make up for the bad, that's for sure. And we as humans, we tend to be, we tend to focus on the negative bias because like that's the thing that helps us survive. That is a survival, an evolutionary survival strategy, if you will. And so, yeah, I'm not gonna just, I'm not gonna say my parents were good people or even good parents, because they weren't. The reason I hesitated there is because I said I wasn't gonna forgive them. And that's a me thing. Forgiveness is not for them, it's you. It's a gift you give yourself. But I'm not ready to do it yet. I'm not. I would like to be, but I'm not. And so, I'm sure largely because of them, that's why I'm able to deal with the chaos of being homeless, and why it's difficult living in a place like this on my own, where it's safe, because I'm not used to safety. And why I'm sure I've done things in the past that help jeopardize that safety, because it's such a foreign concept to me that I might even sabotage that safety to effectively go back to that comforting chaos, which I think would be a great video title. So I'm going to use that. In fact, I'm going to turn on my computer, which is supposed to be already on. Just trying to remember, see whenever it decides to kick back on. I gotta admit, so far, I'm not seeing the hype for the maple syrup. I'm not saying it's bad. And who's to say I might keep it in my life? But granted, I also don't really keep syrup in my life. So I keep sugar, I keep brown sugar, and I keep white sugar. Because even though I know that brown sugar is basically molasses and white sugar, because molasses is what you extract from brown sugar, because sugar, like sugar in the raw, so to speak. That's also known as demerara sugar. That's basically the rawest form of sugar that you can get that's least processed and still has the qualities that make up molasses. That's why molasses is sweet. But anyway, because I think that bottle that I bought was like close to $8, something like that. And I mean, it's like, again, now I haven't had them on pancakes. The pancakes suck. I hate pancakes. I've never had a good pancake in my life. Waffles are superior in every way. And as such, I will continue to, stand by that statement. Because waffles have crunchiness, they have that browning, the Maillard reaction and all that. Waffles are superior. And, there's not a lot of reason to have, my opinion, not a huge number of reasons to have maple syrup and or some kind of syrup in my life. And I could just make simple syrup. There's the rest of the milk. Let's put that in the fridge for now. They might be thinking, whoa, so you're one of those guys. No, I'm only one of those guys when I live by myself. Because I'm the only one that has to deal with it. When I am living with another person, I'm much more I'm more cognizant of the other person and the influences I have on that person. More so now than I used to be, for sure. When I was younger, definitely not. But most of the time that, I've lived with another person was not as an adult. A good chunk of my life, I guess, it depends. Number of factors. I really only lived by myself for about 7.5 years as an adult. Roughly. So, maybe I'm wrong. I think what I'll do next time, I don't know. We'll see when it comes to, it's already getting nice and brown though, that's for sure. So I'm trying to think about the best way, because maybe I could just, thinking maybe I should soak it first, then put the grounds in. I don't know. So far, this seems like it's a good idea. Whoa, maybe. Uh-oh. I'm getting real close to the potential limit here. May have accidentally overshot. So I'm very, 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 very slowly dropping this filter. Well, shit. Oh, let's get another paper towel. Damn it. Like Alanis Morissette said, you live, you learn. clean up the mess here shortly. And it's not a huge loss. It's just a little coffee. Alright, so maybe up to the 1500 line. And then figure out how to, again, I don't know, fuck. I don't even remember how well I did my first AeroPress run when it came to coffee. For all I know, I fucked that one up too. Usually, I have what's known as beginner's luck in most things. Generally speaking, I will get something right the first time I do it. I say generally because not always. And then like the next time I'll fuck it up in like 15 ways, which is so annoying when it does happen. But yeah, it'll be fine. It's not like it matters. It's just coffee, you know. And it's not even that much. I mean, like the grounds haven't really been fully doing their thing. So what the hell? Come on. That's one thing I have a problem with this computer. Is like it looks like it's on, but it's acting like it's off. So I'm gonna have to just power it off. And I hate having to do this. It's annoying. And the one thing I'm also finding extremely frustrating regarding basically every goddamn electronic device now is the necessity to hold the power button down for 10 fucking seconds. I'm like, I get it. You want to avoid unintentional power cycling. I get that. I understand that. I also don't fucking care. There needs to be, when the device itself will not let me turn itself off, I shouldn't have to fucking hold the fucking thing for 6 seconds. That means it's been programmed to do that, and that means the programming is still functioning. So just let me turn the fucking switch off. Okay, sure, this might have to incorporate more moving parts, which I'm sure they're trying to avoid, and maybe that has something to do with the streamlining of the space that's currently available, because phones aren't really going to get much bigger or smaller than they are. In fact, they've gone the opposite direction and gotten bigger overall, just on average. Because the first phone that I had was like that big. I mean, I have it somewhere. I can literally show it. I still have my first smartphone. It's useless, but I still have it. Because I'm a stickler for not wanting to throw shit away like that, just for the sake of it. And I'd rather, use it. I'd rather put it in a recycling situation. But anyway. God damn it. Alright, there. I have a notepad that's open pretty much all the time. Unless, of course, I restart the machine. And so I'll try to type in the name, if I can remember it, between now and the time I upload it. Because I always watch the video after I'm done recording. Speaking of which, am I still recording? Yes, I am. Okay. You never know. I may have accidentally pushed the button. But, yeah, the whole, beginner's luck thing is annoying. Because it makes me feel like I can actually do it. And then I'm like, the fuck? How come I can't do it as easy as it was before? It was simple. It was easy. I pulled it off. What the fuck, man? So, that's a thing that's annoying. But, I don't really know what the main point of all this was. And one of the things about this computer that also annoys me is more recently, within the last month, it basically, soon after I got here, the nightlight basically doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. It only turns on when I can load up specific games or when I do certain specific actions. But it's supposed to be on all the time. All right, I have it set to where it turns off for 5 minutes a day. But the rest is, because I don't like the bright bluish color. I prefer the warmer color of the nightlight. And I have it set at a really good temp. So, it's but the thing that's frustrating about it is it'll restart after a bit and then it'll just be blaring. But then I can't turn, if I go to turn it on, it does not work. So what I'll do is I'll load up something like Dead Cells because it loads pretty quickly. I'll load Dead Cells, it turns it on, it's fine. Annoying. It would be nice if I didn't have to do that. Whatever. Okay, so. Although I just realized regarding this, if I just leave it this way, it's just exposed. So I still need the lid. Okay. See, learning. Or, as Apocalypse said, in X-Men Apocalypse, which should have been at least 2 movies, learning. The fuck is that movie, man? So bad. I'm going to use this to level, let's try to level it off. If you even watch, I'm not a massive X-Men fan regarding just the general IP. I enjoyed the television show when I could watch it when I was a kid. It's got a banger intro, which, by the way, the 97 intro is not the same. It's their attempt at being the same, but it's missing a lot of qualities. The main reason is because Disney, in their infinite piles of money, somehow couldn't pay the original person. Licensing, whatever, and I'm sure it's because they want their own version of permanent ownership, I'm sure. So it doesn't sound the same as the original. It sounds close. It definitely is not the same. You can go and listen to them side by side. The old X-Men animated series intro, and then listen to the 97. And I was pretty hesitant at first with the 97 series because I'm what's going on in this show? Some of the things, didn't feel like that it had that kind of weight to them. Because one of the things about the original series is that each episode was a fully fleshed out episode. You can go to a random episode from the original series, except for maybe during the Phoenix Saga and stuff like that. And, of course not the first episode because it was really 2 episodes. But if you just pick a random episode from the original series, they are really well done on their own. And, one of my favorites is when it's just Wolverine and he ends up going back north to Canada and he deals with Sabretooth. And I'm not sure, I think it might be one of the first times you see Sabretooth. But it's a really solid fucking episode. You get to see Wolverine as a person, and it's not as an X-Man going off to being a person. This is Wolverine. This is a Logan episode. This is about who he is as a person, about his past, he's connecting with other people the way that he does not connect with other people in the X-Men, which is saying something. Like, that's a big story beat right there. That's a big aspect of who he is and like the lore of who Logan is. It's like, this man is working together in a way that you don't see as when he is an X-Man. And it's like, okay, so why the dichotomy? And I don't know if they truly fleshed that out or not, but like, it's a good thing that they show this other side to who he is. It's like, oh, he can work in a team, but there's a reason why he doesn't when he's working with the X-Men. And for all we know, and the thing that's not really fleshed out is the reasoning why. I mean, you know, I'm sure, and, you know, overarching storytelling wasn't nearly the strong suit of like animation back then. Like, you know, watch the Batman animated series, same kind of situation where every single episode was its own episode. And like, yeah, it helped sort of tell the story of like the villain and Batman himself. But like, it didn't really connect the dots so much other than, you know, Batman's got dead parents type thing. But I will say, every time, Batman still treated the enemies like humans. He didn't treat them in a way kind of like how Logan treats Sabretooth, where he's just disposable. And, you know, through that sense of disposability, Logan looks like a villain. Like, the fact that he is treating this relatively unknown enemy as something worse than dirt. And that's the thing that I really like about just the general nature of like the superhero realm, is that it very much was intended to talk about relationships between people. You know, X-Men was a specific metaphor, parallel, what's the other word I'm looking for? It starts with an A. Allegory for the civil rights movement. Like, the whole point was, hey, these people are being treated poorly because of something that they don't have control over. They are being round up. They are being put into concentration camps of some kind, or at the very least, their society is being, you know, society at large is distancing themselves from them. They're trying to make laws against them to limit their capabilities, to limit their freedoms, because they're not being treated as equals. And then, who are Professor X and Magneto? Well, they're effectively the opposites of their similar, you know, relatively similarly named people. Professor X is not Malcolm X. He is Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. And then Magneto is Malcolm X. Magneto is, I am going to get my rights and my freedoms however I feel like it. I will use force. I will use violence. We will subjugate you if it comes to that. And then, you know, Magneto even comes to the conclusion like, hey, we are the next evolutionary step. We are better than the rest of society. Mutants are the better version of humans. And so we should be on top. And so, you know, that's maintaining sort of that hierarchical thing where Professor X is all about the egalitarianism. He is not about the hierarchy. He's about equality. And it's like, look, we can work together. We can be friends. And he is friends with Magneto. And so, you know, Magneto has the Brotherhood, and they're very much about, you know, that sort of like going from being oppressed to becoming the controllers, the oppressors themselves, because they feel that is essentially their birthright to do so. And like that, going that step is the wrong way. Like, now I get it. You know, there's times in my life, even now, where I'm just like, exterminate the oppressors. But my opinion is exterminate the oppressors, but don't just oppress the rest of everybody after the fact. Like, there's a stopping point. You know, there's a limit. But, you know, I'm sure somebody sees me and, you know, they think I'm naive when I think that. But, like, that's kind of the thing about X-Men. And, you know, going back to, you know, like, that's the general idea of it all. But then, you know, they don't necessarily they don't hammer that every single time a character's on screen. In that Logan episode, it's like, hey, Logan had a life. Logan's even willing to go back to this life. He doesn't. He goes back to his old life, or he goes back to the X-Men life, and largely it's incited by Sabretooth, I think, going off and potentially threatening the X-Men. I can't remember exactly why he ends up going back. But like, Logan still does pine for that old life, that previous life. And he even, like I said, he works together with others as well. But he does find some, you know, attraction to the Professor X lifestyle. And I think that's a really good, I don't know how well they depicted that struggle, that internal struggle. I'll have to go back and rewatch it, which, not exactly a piece of homework I'm against. But the fact that that is something that he's dealing with is something that's important, I'd say. And that's kind of the nature of X-Men. And that's why, like, they do cover it a bit with the new series, the X-Men 97. It's it's less episodic, like they deal with episodic aspects, but they're also maintaining, you know, a full-on, like, season arc. And it's hard. It's virtually impossible to have just an episode and also a season arc and then have both of them be extremely solid and well-rounded and well thought out in 30 minutes. And then really it's even less. It's like 20 something. Because it's essentially, you know, cut for television, even though it's on like Disney Plus, I think. And that's the thing about, like, that's one of the limitations, one of the issues with the limitations of television. You know, like, the reason why most television shows didn't have a whole lot of season arcs or long story arcs is because they were basically, like, vying for 7-minute periods of your life. You know, it's like, you're 7 minutes, then here's an ad break. You're 7 minutes, then an ad break, and 7 minutes, and an ad break, and it's over. Sometimes even less. And so, like, that's why a lot of television is the way that it is. You know, that's why if you go back and rewatch Friends, you're like, man, I didn't really need, like, one, Ross is a fucking psychopath, but two, like, when you watch them back to back to back, it's like, this is a bit much. But then you have to realize, like, it wasn't when you didn't have the ability to just rewatch everything all at once. It was, you watched it and then you waited a week. And then everybody watched it at the same goddamn time. And it had a cultural impact on the way that we did that. Because everybody would watch the season finale of Friends and then go to fucking work on Monday and then fucking freak out over it. You know, the watch parties of Game of Thrones were essentially similar to that. Then I would say Game of Thrones was probably the final cultural shift from the old way to the new school form. Like, yes, binging television shows and the like, you know, seasons were dropped and all that kind of stuff. But Game of Thrones was so big and so good for 4 seasons. What happened after that, I don't really know. No, I know because I watched it and all, but it was one of those things where people watched it And then it impacted your day to day afterwards because people watched it on the same day. Because it all got released on Sunday night. And nobody else could watch it beforehand. And then what was the next day? Monday morning. People going to work and they were talking about fucking Game of Thrones. I would say that's the last vestiges of that old methodology. That's why, like, Prime and Disney are kind of reintroducing the weekly releases, because there is social cohesion around these types of television shows. We listen to a story and then we talk about the story together and we bond. And that's one of the reasons why, like, media matters. That's why comics matter, and movies and television shows and podcasts and the like. That's why these things matter, because stories are still that important to the rest of us. They are how we bonded in the beginning, and they are still how we bond now. And it's one of the reasons why there is a loneliness epidemic. It's not just a male loneliness epidemic, but it is a loneliness epidemic across society, because we're not sharing the stories the same way. We're not collectively sharing the same stories. We're now having niche story collections. And then oftentimes, and because that's very easily done, it can make things a little bit more isolated. And what's the answer? I don't know. People are working on it in one way or another. But one of the best things to do is to literally meet people face to face, if you can. Or to do what I'm doing. Fuck, I don't know. This may be a way to do that. I don't know. But, you know, it is what it is. X-Men is awesome. Yes, it's about civil rights. And it's not civil rights just in general, but it's specifically, originally, about the civil rights of people of color, black people in America, because they have been subjected to chattel slavery for generations, for hundreds of years. And then, you know, you have the Reformation, and then you have, you know, reparations that still haven't been paid. And then you have Jim Crow and the KKK. And you still have people to this day who still hold so many of the same perceptions and the same ideologies. And there are people who are alive today. Ruby Bridges is still alive. She had to have the National Guard escort her to school because of her safety. Her safety was being threatened by a bunch of fucking white people. And it's like, yeah, she's old, but she's still alive. And guess what? There are people who were threatening Ruby Bridges, or who hated Ruby Bridges, or hated what she represented, who are still alive. And some of them are even in control of our political offices right now because they're so fucking old, and yet they still have these powers. There's also a reason why we need to have younger people get into these offices. And to sort of just take it on home, as it were, if you are going to run for office, I've been watching a video that Phil uploaded today about this one gentleman who's running for governor of Georgia. I still don't know what his policies are. I think I'm maybe 20 minutes into the video. I knew what Zohran Mamdani's policies are. I didn't really know what Kat Abou-Ghazaleh's policies are. She was prevalent enough for me to notice who she was and see her and be involved and you know, to witness her and be exposed to her in so many ways. But her policies specifically, I don't know what they were. And I'm having a hard time seeing what his policies are. So take that as a thing that's maybe indicative of the likelihood of his success. I mean, Kamala Harris's policies weren't exactly policies. They were anti-fuckface policies. And so I can see why she may have lost in that regard. But nail down the policies that the average person can grab onto and then fucking do shit about it. And if that means, you know, doing your absolute, if that means saying, just like what the fascist has said, on day one, I'm going to sign an executive order does this or does that or does this. Just like with Gavin Newsom when he was like, hey, I'm president, because the current president called him president. And he's like, we're going to, have a probe into the corruption, the Epstein files, and marijuana's legal, and, we're going to make healthcare for all and daycares for all and all that kind of stuff. That shit sells. And right now, in the video that I was watching, he was talking, the guy who was, name again, I cannot remember, whose policies I do not know. He's talking about marijuana becoming, being legal in a lot of these other states, but then it's not legal in Florida, and so people are dealing with that, or in Georgia. And it's like, you got to get it federally legal, really, but also you got to nail that. You got to fucking tell people that shit on the regular. And if the illegality of marijuana in your state is a big issue that is actually causing a significant problem, not only can you say we got to decriminalize it, but also you got to have reforms that are associated with the backlog of people who, it's like, okay, now it's not illegal, but there are people who are in jail because of it. Now we got to take care of those people. Oh, then there's going to be, well, you shouldn't have done a crime when it was illegal. Like, fuck you. The fact that it was illegal was the problem in the first place. They are victims of a systemic issue. So we need to reverse the systemic issue and get those people out of jail so that they can be functioning members of society instead of locked away. And that's for a good team who understands this kind of stuff. Those are the people who need to deal with that. But I think I've talked for too long. I got to clean up my mess. Have fun.